Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists, Michele here, and we are ready to begin our video series on chapter 23, which is the digestive system. And of course, the best place to start is just, okay, what exactly is the job or the jobs of the digestive system? And so what we can say is their job is to break down food, break down food, release nutrients. And I think we can think about both of these things together as actually digestion. And then another important business of the digestive system is to actually then absorb those nutrients. So we can say, I think I summarized this in our chapter 1, obtain nutrients, and we're doing this by first digesting food and then absorbing those nutrients. When we talk about the digestive system structures, we are going to have what we describe as a set of primary structures, or what we can refer to as the alimentary canal. Aliment is talking about to nourish, so that's the origin of that term. Or very often we'll talk about it as the gastrointestinal tract, or the GI tract for shorthand. And what we'll see is the primary structures are extending, it's a tube from the mouth to the anus. And that's all it is, except along the length of the tube, we have highly specialized areas. And so we'll be going into the details of those as we go through. We can begin in the mouth as the primary starting point for the digestive tract. And we will see that digestion actually does begin here. And then we have our tube, which we studied in the respiratory tract as well. We called this the pharynx. And remember, we said the portion directly behind the mouth, we called the oropharynx. And then the area directly behind the larynx, we called the laryngopharynx. And then from there, we have our esophagus. The esophagus is taking that material down into the stomach. And what we can go ahead and do too, let us say, let's say we have food that we're eating, goes into the mouth. And as soon as it mixes with the saliva, we call it a bolus. So let's say, make sure we can read that. So bolus is talking about food plus saliva. So we swallow that bolus and it goes in the esophagus down to the stomach. And at this point, we're going to call it chyme. So when you get bolus plus hydrochloric acid from the stomach, we're going to call that chyme. So really those terms are telling us where the food stuff is in the GI tract, what time frame is it in our digestion, things like that. From the stomach, the GI tract will move into what's called the small intestine, which is actually the longest part of the entire tract, but it has a very small diameter. And so that's actually how it's getting its name. We will see the very top portion of the small intestine is called the duodenum. And that's not exactly in the right labeling location, but it's good enough for us at this moment. From the duodenum, we'll get into what's called the jejunum. And the majority of the small intestine is the jejunum. And then the very last section emptying into the large intestine is going to be called the ileum. So the small intestine is divided up into these three regions. We'll see some differences in their anatomy and in the physiology. And so we'll be paying attention to that as we go through our study. So we have the small intestine divided first into the duodenum, then the jejunum, and then the ileum. And there's different ways of pronouncing duodenum. Some students say duodenum, some folks say duodenum, and that's totally fine. From the small intestine, we get into the large intestine, and it is called large intestine, again, related to its diameter more than its length. And at this area where the ileum is feeding into the large intestine, we can see the appendix. You're, of course, studying all of these regions as part of your lab work, and so you'll be getting some more specific information there, and we'll add in a few details as we go. And then we see the last portion of the large intestine is called the rectum. And then of course we have the exit, which is the anus. And so taking a look at this model, we're seeing the digestive tract from the mouth opening up into the pharynx, first the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx, and then the tube called the esophagus, which feeds into the stomach. The stomach then feeds material into the small intestine, starting at the duodenum, jejunum, and then the ileum, which empties into the large intestine. We can see the appendix hanging off in this area where the ileum feeds into the large intestine. Large intestine then becomes the rectum and then the anus. These would all be considered the GI tract or alimentary canal. So these are primary structures. Our secondary structures then are going to be important glands and organs that are going to secrete into the GI tract. And we'll see a lot of times these secretions are important digestive enzymes, or we'll see important buffers, because we are going to see some regulation of pH happening inside of the tract. And these include salivary glands. This includes the liver. This includes the gallbladder. And this includes the pancreas. So we've talked about each one of these in more detail. When we look at the mouth, we are actually seeing the salivary glands here. And I think maybe I pointed these out as tonsils before, which is not right. So here we should be seeing a salivary gland like under the tongue and at the back of the throat. We can also see the liver here. This is a really big organ right underneath the diaphragm in the abdominopelvic cavity. It's hiding the connection of where the esophagus meets up with the stomach. And it's actually hiding the pancreas. So we're not able to see the pancreas on this particular model. We can see kind of poking out underneath the liver, the gallbladder. So I have a couple other images that I'll share with you for that. Okay. Up next, let's take a look at the basic overall structure of the GI tract. We're going to be talking about the 4 layers. So stay tuned. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.